So it might have been midweek in Sky Bet League One, but that doesn't stop us. Let's break down some brilliant clashes under the lights. As always, if you do find value from the content, please make sure you subscribe. Over 60% of the people that watch the podcast aren't yet subscribed. If that's one of you, please make sure you change that. It's free to do so and it helps me grow the podcast and reach new audiences. Let's begin with the first game, Lincoln City against Charlton Athletic. So it finishes Lincoln 3, Charlton 1, the XG 2.76 to 1.52. It's Michael Appleton's first defeat as Charlton manager, and who would have thought it, against his former club Lincoln City, who ironically don't have a manager themselves. Touching on Lincoln first, to a man, I thought they were exceptional. I'd say their best performance of the season so far. After a patchy and potentially sluggish first 20 minutes, the Imps came to life and performed every aspect of their play with positive aggression and total confidence. One Lincoln player broke a record in this game. More on that later. It's really interesting and really telling, but the attacking patterns were fluid with the creative spark and ultimate joy to watch. Caretaker Tom Shaw deserves a lot of credit. The attitude shift is visible, the intention to play on the front foot and entertain throughout. When touching on Charlton, the best way of describing this Charlton display is a reality check. After 6 weeks of total improvement and progression under new manager Michael Appleton, for the first time in a while, they were outrun, outbattled and ultimately outplayed for large parts. Weirdly, and unlike Appleton's normal footballing principles, there was a lack of energy, concentration and a continued fear of a defensive error. The terrible away form continues for Charlton, and if anything we've learnt after yesterday's display, the Addicts aren't quite the finished article yet. When looking at the graph brought to you by SofaScore, the graph shows after Lincoln's slow start, an effective level of control was grasped and the attacking output followed relentlessly. When looking at the statistics, notably Lincoln have been better defensively compared to attack so far this season, but last night the shackles were off and a creative freedom brought this side to life. The home side accumulated 29 shots and had 5 big chances across the 90 minutes, 2 metrics that have let this Lincoln side down far too often already. With the Charlton errors being pounced on quickly and the potential improvement in shot conversion, this game could have easily been further in the favour of Lincoln, no doubt about it. Now I had to bring this to you. Sorensen broke a really interesting record yesterday. For the first time in EFL football data history, Sorensen had 11 shots in one game and caused countless problems for Charlton all night. It's never been recorded a double digit for an individual's shot number. Really fascinating that. You can see a shot map on the screen now. Lots and lots of efforts from in and around the penalty area. Alongside his assist, he managed 7 passes into the final third and constantly tormented the struggling Thomas on the left-hand side. He had a pretty wretched night. His direct runs and eye for wide creation was a brilliant edge to Lincoln's impressive attacking show. Although another player definitely shone as well, Hakeeb Adelakan, he has to be mentioned. He accumulated 2 goals, 3 chances created and a 100% successful dribble output, and get this, half of his touches inside the opposition box were converted into goals. What a fantastic stat that one is. When summing up and giving my final points on this game for Lincoln, it's either a fantastic no manager bounce or Liam Shaw has got this group playing a brand of football that's been lost for some time. Of course, it could also be a bit of both. So it finishes Wigan 2, Oxford 0, the XG 0.84 to 0.44. It's 1 point from the last 2 for Oxford as they come very unstuck against a robust and very well organised Wigan outfit. Let's touch on Wigan first. Sean Maloney's game plan worked and was executed perfectly last night, all built from a well organised structure and the priority to defend their box throughout. The discipline and smart timings to commit bodies forward caused Oxford issues, particularly in that second half, but was also the move that led to the opener on the break. Soaking up Oxford domination from deep never fazed Wigan whatsoever, but taking the lead in the game only made that low block more effective and frustrating for Oxford to break down. Very similar stories to Port Vale and to Cambridge for Oxford on the opening day of the season. They stopped Oxford from creating any kind of attacking output and defended perfectly across the 90 minutes. As game plans go and tactical plans go, they got it spot on. For Oxford, brutally, it was a tough watch at times, especially after the break. The first half was very similar to Saturday, except we conceded instead of scoring. A big difference, granted, but very similar in the way we had ultimate control, but it was missing that all-important end product. The attempt to play the final ball was agonising to watch at times. Mark Harris really struggled. He did not look at the races, with the attacking fluidity looking painful and misjointed throughout. The camp does remain pretty leggy with that zip, magic, spark just being forced and often not really being there. When looking at the graph in front of you, it does paint a pretty familiar story from an Oxford point of view, but also visualises Wigan's game plan clearly. Other than one spell in that first half, Oxford's ball possession counted for nothing due to the lack of creative spark that followed. This lethargic, and I use that word really carefully because we've been nothing like lethargic since the start of the season, but it felt like that at times and quite passive as well. It made Wigan's job easier and allowed them to protect their lead in much more comfortable fashion. When it comes to the stats, it doesn't make it much better reading from an Oxford perspective and further show how the lack of attacking spark was the centre of the downfall. With 65% possession and 70% in the first half, the away side failed to create a single big chance and only one shot from inside the box. This metric shows us and tells us two things. Number one, and I'd say the big one, Oxford were well below par in the final third and lacked any edge when it comes to creation. And secondly, and I'd say, look, I don't want to sway it so it doesn't make it as bad from an Oxford look. I think it is pretty poor, but I would say it's important. Wigan were fantastic at defending their box and the inside of their area, preventing any moments of play leading to goal-scoring opportunities. Let's look at the shot map here. The shot map further emphasises the Oxford problem. The area in which efforts were being taken are not threatening whatsoever. The majority of Oxford shots were being taken in Zone 13 and Zone 14 from the areas mainly designated to creating. Oxford striker Mark Harris failed to register a single shot at all. That is hugely damning. In comparison, Wigan were able to carve output from much more encouraging positions, e.g. nearer the in goal. Sorry, but it's true. Look at the difference when it comes to areas in which efforts were being taken. When it comes to final points and summing up this game, as mentioned earlier, as much as Oxford were not at the races, Wigan deserve serious credit. Their brave tactical plan worked a treat and never looked like failing. It's been a tough few weeks for Oxford on and off the pitch. It's now time to recover, regroup and put things right on Saturday, and don't let this derail all of that positivity that we saw in the early stages of the season. In dramatic style, it finishes Wycombe 2, Bolton 4. The XG 0.62 to 1.37 in probably the game of the night. Bolton go from throwing away a 2-goal lead to earning a crucial 3 points on the road. Let's break it down, beginning with the Wycombe point of view. I think the best headlines to break down this Wycombe performance are, firstly, second best in the first 45, great reaction for the comeback, poor defending throughout. When you put all of those aspects together, you probably do lose an entertaining game of football with plenty of goals, and a 4-2 defeat, I'd say that probably did happen. The graph will show this further later on, but being slow out of the traps meant that Wycombe were on an instant back foot and forced the host to constantly chase Bolton all night. And talking of Bolton, let's touch on them now. How many times have I said this already this season? Why do Bolton make it so difficult for themselves? On reflection, it's a game won through brilliant attitude, resilience and impressive first half, but the consistency across the full 90 minutes, I think, could still be improved. Having said that, the best teams and the sides looking to go on brilliant and impressive runs always find a way to win, and Bolton yesterday, it wasn't always plain sailing. They got away with it and got over the line. When looking at the graph in front of you now, it's a cliche, but it's a game of two halves. Bolton were much better in the first half, especially the first 30 minutes, but the Wycombe response was promising post the break and fueled a way back for them in the match. It's the last 5 minutes that cost them, and the reason why Bolton travel home from Wycombe over the bloody moon. When looking at the statistical side of this game, as I'll go into detail in a few moments' time, a lot of this match was Bolton making sure they punished Wycombe for their mistakes. A telling stat that emphasises this point further is that Bolton scored from every shot on target. They had 4 shots on goal. They scored, of course, 4 goals. It was clinical and 3.42 better than their open play XG. From their 0.58 expected goals open play, they still created 3 big chances, suggesting a lot of those weren't all down to their own making. So let's break down the avoidable nature of Wycombe's defending. We sometimes exaggerate, but every one of the goals Wycombe conceded could have been avoided. Let's go through all 4 of them. The first one is a direct dribble through the centre of the pitch. Nobody is closing him down, and the goalkeeper obviously should do much better. He spills it, it goes through his hands, he tries to rescue it, it's gone over the line. It's a poor goalkeeping error, but I'd say the ball into him, he's not being closed down, it's a pretty free dribble at the defence. He takes a shot off, and again, the goalkeeper should do better. The second goal, a terribly organised back line, leaving Morley through on goal from a direct long ball. I mean, it's all over the shop, there's no structure, it's not straight, and of course Morley can get in behind, he's well onside, it's a good finish. The third goal is a corner, a very good header, I must say that, but set pieces tend to be avoidable. I'd say the third one, look, it's a header, it's a corner, set pieces, frustrating for a manager, but it was well converted. I said that's the least avoidable out of the 4. The fourth one, a clear and clumsy penalty that was always going to be given, a push from behind, leaving the referee with no choice. A definite penalty for me. It's silly, it feels quite lazy, tiredness I think probably played a part in making that decision. You wouldn't do that in the first 5 minutes of the game. He did, and the referee quite rightly points to the spot. I'm by no means taking anything away from the conversion of those goals. Bolton were fantastic at capitalising on said mistakes, but Wycombe should be much better and were punished time and time again. When looking at key players, there's definitely a few candidates, but I'd go with Josh Sheehan in the middle. He caught my eye. As his heat map does show, he dictated things in the middle, dropping into the number 6 role, creating and helping transition from deep. He accumulated 2 assists, 3 chances created, 6 passes into the final third, 2 defensive actions. I thought he was at the heart of everything Bolton did positively last night in what was a crucial away victory. So the final game in real detail, Derby 2, Exeter 0, the XG 1.46 to 0.06. With all the pressure on Derby and Port Vale, the Grams cruised through to earn a comfortable 3 points. Let's touch on Derby first. It was more than much needed, a dominant, relentless, pleasing display that could have and probably should have been more. It was a test centred around turning ultimate control into positive outcomes. A struggle for Derby on many occasions this season. One comes to mind straight away, Cambridge a few weeks ago. That was a case of having all of the ball but not being able to find end product, and again not creating on more occasions. Much better last night. After recent issues surrounding the lack of shots and risks being taken, there was definitely an element of freedom in Derby's play last night. It felt less rigid and much more fluid, particularly in the attacking build-up. When touching on Exeter, that's now 6 straight defeats in Sky Bet League 1, their last winning coming back in the middle of September. It was a game of chase throughout, hardly a progressive kick at Pride Park last night for them. The failure to gain any rhythm or sway in the match made creativity almost impossible. Look at the XG and look at the graph in front of you now. It shows how the one-way traffic was just extremely prominent and the ultimate attacking control Derby had in the game. As the stats will show in a moment, Exeter couldn't sustain any pressure on Derby and failed to ride the relentless storm the home side formed for large spells. Let's touch on the stats. The metric that strikes me straight away is the number of shots Derby were able to take in this game. Coming into this match, Derby had accumulated the 4th lowest number of shots taken from open play, only 1 more than Cheltenham, who took 11 games to score their first league goal. Last night they managed 26, with just under half of those coming from inside the opposition box and 8 on target, giving them an on-target XG of 1.49, which, if we're being picky, with total end product potentially being higher. For Exeter, it's not pretty reading, an open play XG of 0.02 with a failure to hit a shot on target. That's now 3 games without a goal. They are dire numbers when looking at the attacking metrics. No aspect of their attacking performance gave them any chance of coming away with anything from this game. It was utterly toothless in the final third. When looking at the shot map, it's nothing groundbreaking, but very clearly visualises the improvement of Derby's shot taking only in comparison to Saturday. Of course, it's not necessary or possible in every game, but the stark difference does prove more risks to be taken, and when the shackles are off and lifted, things look much easier on the eye. When looking at key players, I thought Mendes-Lang was so effective in this game, not just for his goal, but his general influence on the Derby forward play. Along with his goal, accumulated 4 big chances, the most most out of anyone on the pitch, 70 touches, more than any other Derby attacker or midfielder, 7 progressive passes into the final third, the highest number of successful dribbles with 7, and with the most duels won out of any other Derby County player. The physical wide man was on fire yesterday and really helped the hosts put Exeter to the sword time and time again. When summing up and giving my final points on this game for Derby, it's promising and encouraging, but must be a regular occurrence and backed up on a consistent basis. The brand of football was much easier to watch on the yard, with both goals coming from a fast-paced move on the deck. For Exeter, it's obviously worrying this losing streak does continue, and from top of the table around a month ago, it's been a downward spiral since. Let's go around the grounds. So around the grounds we go. It finishes Barnsley 3, Shrewsbury 0, Blackpool 3, Cheltenham 2, Bristol Rovers 1, Stevenage 1, Cambridge 0, league leaders Pompey 0, Carlisle 2, Burton 1, Derby 2, Exeter 0, Lincoln 3, Charlton 1, Northampton 2, Leyton Orient 2, Port Vale 0, Peterborough 1, Wigan 2, Oxford 0, Wycombe 2, Bolton 4, Reading 1, Fleetwood Town 2. If you did find value from the content, please make sure you subscribe and leave a like. Over 100 likes would be fantastic. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I will see you on Sunday. Take care.